Tommy from Drafter here. And today I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in order to be successful using Word docs with AI tools. If you're an attorney, you're obviously no stranger to Microsoft Word, and you probably have a love-hate relationship or maybe even a hate-hate relationship with it. Unfortunately for you, Microsoft Word is kind of one of the worst file formats around for working with AI tools. And you might have even run into some issues if you've just tried to upload one to the ChatGPT and have it make some edits, or even use something like GitHub Copilot and not been really happy with the results. I'm going to go over the basics of these files. I'm going to explain why AI struggles with them, what to look out for, and in general, just give you a better sense of how to actually get what you want out of AI tools using Microsoft Word. I'm going to get into the weeds a bit technically with how Microsoft Word Docx files are actually implemented under the hood. And the point is not to teach you how to be a programmer or bore you with the details. It's to give you a better intuition for how the AI actually works, which really comes in handy with wielding it to your advantage. You want to be aware of the limitations, and you want to be aware of what you can do to actually maximize the chances that the AI does what you want. So up on my screen, I've got a fictional answer document, and I tried to style it to look like a Florida federal court pleading. And we're going to start by just having Claude Code make some edits to this. And just to remind you guys, I'm on my desktop and I've got a folder called Claude Code for Lawyers Demo. And we can actually see the docx file here, fictional flip answer.docx. Now I'm going to jump over to Claude Code, and just a reminder, I've got the Claude Code for Lawyers Demo folder selected here. So that's going to give Claude access to that folder. And I'm just simply going to ask Claude to rewrite the first paragraph and put something interesting in there. Okay, so I submitted the prompt, which I have rewrite the first paragraph of the docx answer, put something interesting in there. And if we take a look, Claude has really already been hard at work. In fact, it's run a bunch of different commands. And if we go back over into the docx file, if I personally wanted to rewrite this in Microsoft Word, I could just highlight the first paragraph, delete it, and start typing whatever I want. It's super easy. So why is Claude struggling so much? And just to illustrate how much work it's actually doing and how much it's struggling, it hasn't even touched the file, and we're already at 4% context usage. And if we take a look, Claude is actually trying to extract the text of the docx. And what that means is when you or I look at the actual content, we are always looking at it in Microsoft Word. Now, Microsoft Word is a program that is specifically designed to open and read and write docx files. What that means is when you open Microsoft Word, all the text is visible, all that formatting is visible. So everything that's nice about docx, like the formatting here, is different than the formatting here. We have a caption that's kind of like a mini table. And here we have a heading that has a specific font size, and it's centered and bolded and all of that good stuff. That has to be encoded in the docx file. And again, Claude is still asking me permission. I'm going to allow it to do stuff. If we take a look at what Claude was actually extracting from the documents, we're going to notice that it looks really scary. And if we take a look here, we can see pieces of what is actually on the screen in Word. So again, we can see here in the circuit court of the 11th Judicial Circuit. And if we scoot back over, I would guess that that part of the text that Claude is seeing corresponds to this part of the actual documents. But it's covered in all of these tags and all of the scary stuff that is really causing a lot of problems for Claude. This is the underlying content of the file. So the docx file is going to contain this content, and it needs to have that formatting encoded. And that formatting stuff that's really nice for you and me is super bloated for Claude. It finally was able to actually go and edit that content. And again, for you and me, that just means highlighting the part we want and then making our changes. For Claude, it has to figure out, based on this nasty format, where the actual first paragraph is. And then it has to figure out how to surgically edit this nasty, it's called an XML file. It has to figure out how to surgically edit that. And then it has to make sure it didn't mess anything up. Now, if we actually go over to the docx file again, we're going to notice that nothing is actually changed in the first paragraph. Claude did edit the file, but the issue is when you open a docx file, it is not actually the same file. And what I mean by that is you open a docx file and your computer is going to create a copy of it, and you're going to be editing the copy. So if we want to see the actual changes, we're going to have to go in and X this out, and then we can go and reopen this file. And now we can actually see Claude's changes. I had to reopen that file. We can see here it's some nonsense about the king and the clown. Doesn't really matter about the content, but that's what you have to deal with when you're working with docx. Okay, so now that we get an idea of what Claude's doing, I'm actually going to have Claude unzip the docx. So we're going to look at the actual internals, the guts of the file. And I promise it's not that scary. We're going to be able to map what we're seeing onto what we're seeing in the docx, and it's going to hopefully help you understand how these actually work. So I'm asking Claude to just do that. I'm saying, hey, can you unzip that docx for me? Now, if we look over here, Claude created yet another folder called Docx raw, and it's containing a bunch of different stuff. If we go in under Word, the document.xml is going to be the file that has all of the content for the most part. So if we open this guy up, and I'm opening this up with Google Chrome just because it's the easiest to show you guys, we can see these parts of the document. And it says, in the Circuit Court of the 11th Judicial District, blah, blah, blah. And then here is the caption. And again, there's a lot of formatting content that it's looking at. And then we see the case number. So everything we're seeing in the Docx, and again, this is where Claude actually went and edited. Everything we're seeing in the Docx is actually present in this file. But if we're thinking in terms of tokens, which again, we should always be thinking in terms of tokens, the amount of tokens that a Docx file is going to use is so gigantic. And just to illustrate this, I'm going to Command A and copy this entire file. I'm going to dump it into the OpenAI tokenizer. And just for this simple pleading, we are looking at 10,674 tokens. Now let's go back into the Docx, and I'm going to Command A the exact same content, but this is just the raw text. And that is 2,117 tokens, so about 5 times different. So one of the implications for this is that while Claude can edit Docx files, it is not the ideal format for Claude to reason about file. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you're a defense attorney and you are analyzing a complaint that was filed by the plaintiff. If you have a Docx version of that complaint and you want an AI tool to actually read it for you, but you don't actually care about writing to the file or modifying the format, you just care about the contents, you would want your AI tool to strip away all of those tags and all of that nasty stuff, because the formatting is not relevant. You just want your AI to help you reason about it. And so what you can actually do is convert a Docx file to another format. And so we'll start with Markdown, which is a compact format. I'm gonna go ahead and have Claude do that for us. So I just told Claude to convert it to Markdown, and I told it to be careful and not delete the original. I don't even know if this is necessary, but this is just good practice. Okay, so we can see here, Markdown has the .md extension. And again, I'm just gonna open this with Google Chrome because it's gonna be easiest for us to see. And Markdown is much more compact than Docx. This is all raw text. This is probably gonna be about as good as just using Command A in the Word itself. So let's go ahead and Command A this, and let's copy this into the tokenizer. And so this is 2,500, so it's a little bit more than copying and pasting from the Word doc directly, but it's basically the same. And Markdown in general is gonna be one of your best formats for an AI tool to actually reason about something, because it is token efficient. Every token here, every word is actually contributing something that is going to affect the AI's legal analysis. You wouldn't really want to waste the brain power on specifying exactly the font size if what you're trying to get the AI to do is pick apart an argument or attack some part of the plaintiff's complaint. So if Markdown is so efficient and if Docx is so bad for AI tools, why don't they just only work in Markdown? And honestly, that's a good question. The real issue, though, is with formatting. Obviously, in legal, the formatting matters a lot. That's part of why Microsoft Word is so popular. And especially for something like litigation, there are very strict formatting rules. You could not submit a document that looked like this to a federal court or probably any state court and have it actually get accepted. There's very specific rules that you need to follow. So if you were to have an AI tool draft an answer, for instance, in Markdown, you would need to then convert it to Docx. And I'm gonna go and show you what that looks like. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete the original. And don't worry about this, I have a copy saved, but I'm gonna go and move this to the trash. And then I am back in a new session in Claude Code, and I'm gonna tell Claude to convert the Markdown file to Docx. And as you might have guessed, the formatting information that made the Docx file so bloated in terms of token usage does contain a lot of information, but it's all the formatting information. And now when we're in Markdown, we don't have any of that formatting stuff, so it's a lot more efficient for the AI to reason about. But the issue is we've lost all the information. And so Claude is going to do its best to apply some sort of styling, but it's probably going to look way off, and you're probably going to have to spend a lot of time formatting. It's saying that it's going to be a properly formatted legal pleading, so it's going to try its best to emulate what we were seeing, but I'm very skeptical that it's going to look good. Okay, this has been running for probably about 90 seconds. Claude is really going to try its best here. I'm very curious to see what it's doing. It's taking up a lot of its brain power, and it's probably not going to look that good. Okay, and we're going to go back into the folder, and if you look at this file, build.js, Claude actually wrote, again, a mini little program that it went and ran, and it was, of course, what outputted this docx file. Let's go ahead and open it. Okay, so here's what Claude spit out. I will give it credit. It's a lot better than I was expecting, but it's not quite right. and it also took up a lot of brain power. The caption looks okay. The paragraphs look a lot different than what we had in terms of the indents. And if we go down to the numbered paragraphs, those again look off with the indents. I believe our headings were bolded, centered, and underlined. And the line spacing looks a bit off. And let's go and check on the signature block. The signature block also looks a little bit off. So it's not that you can't have Claude just create or convert something to Docx, but the issue is you're going to have to fix up the formatting, and it's going to be difficult for Claude to really nail it. And keep in mind, this is a legal pleading, which, while it is a bit picky in terms of the formatting you need, is kind of a simple document. Like, there's usually not that much crazy stuff going on. It's mostly text, and it's not like you're using crazy word art most of the time or anything like that. So what's the conclusion of all this? Well, first of all, just understand that Docx is not really set up for editing by a large language model. In the Docx files, there is a lot of information that has to be there in order to specify the formatting, which of course is necessary for the user of Microsoft Word. But if you're an AI model that uses a ton of tokens, up to 5 times or more the amount of tokens as the raw text, and what that means is the AI kind of struggles to read an entire Word doc without first converting it to another format. And it's okay if it converts it to another format. It'll be fine with reasoning about the document and understanding the legal arguments or whatever you're trying to do. But then you have this problem of formatting it back properly when you actually want to output a docx. So if you're using Claude to just make some surgical edits to a docx file, that should work totally fine. But if you're trying to create a document from scratch, if you don't have an existing template or something you can kind of edit in line, it's going to be very difficult, and you're probably going to have to do a lot of formatting. I will say, if you're doing litigation rather than transactional law, it is a little bit better, because with litigation, usually the pleadings and the documents you're creating are kind of done once they're submitted. And what I mean by that is there's no redlining. Whereas if you're doing transactional law and working on contracts, you have to send them back to the other party, and there's like track changes and a lot of this nonsense. At least with litigation, once the document is formatted and turned into a PDF, you're usually kind of done with it. That being said, if you're looking for an easier way to edit these files using ChatGPT or Claude and have the formatting handled automatically, let me know. I'm going to put my email in the description. We've actually developed a plugin for both Claude and ChatGPT that can handle this automatically. So you get to use Claude and ChatGPT, or Claude Code for that matter. You get to edit whatever content you want. You can have Claude help you write your pleadings, and then we take it that final mile and make it so that that formatting is perfect, and you don't have to worry about any of this. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and have a good day.